Welcome to Decoding Digital Media, brought to you by Media Impact International (MII) and our partners Faith Tech. We have an exciting show lined up for you today where we are going to talk about top 7 strategies for social media success in the year 2023, the coming new year. I know the new year is just around the corner, just few more days left as you listen to this, and it is important for you to know what to do to make social media work for your ministry. So today we are going to explore 7 strategies that could help you, and joining me are going to be two experts. John Rawls and Nils Smith are going to join me today. You will hear from them very soon. They will introduce themselves, and I can't wait to get started. But before we get started, just a quick word on how to ask your questions. So if you have any questions throughout the session, you can click the Q&A button that you will find on the Zoom screen, and you can leave your questions there, and we will get to the questions at the end of the session, because we're going to talk about 7 different things. I'm sure you will have different types of questions relating to any of that topic, so leave them in the Q&A section and we will get to it at the end. What we have in store for you is practical strategies. These are tactics and strategies that come out of years of experience between the three of us, and we are going to talk about these 7 things. So pick up your notepad or your iPad with your pencil or whatever you use to take notes, because this is going to be packed with practical inputs. It's going to be packed with tools that you never thought of, and it's going to be packed with strategies that you can straight away implement after listening to this. So we've got an action-packed time coming up. Let's dive right in without wasting any more time. To get into the first strategy for today, we've got the one and only Nils Smith with us. Welcome, Nils. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Thanks, Nachi. It's so good to be here. I am so honored to be in this call with 2 other men that I respect so deeply. Nachi is, I feel like, one of my best friends in the world and the smartest man that I've ever met. And John is a new friend that I have gained a tremendous amount of respect for over the past few months as I've gotten to know him and all the unique work that he's doing in the kingdom. So I'm, for those that I haven't yet met, a few things that I'm involved in, maybe that give you a background on who I am. I'm based in New York City. I'm a dad. I've got 2 daughters. And I love Jesus and go part of Hillsong Church here in New York City. But I work-wise, I was actually one of the first in the part of the first MII trainings. I've been an MII coach for about 7 years. Before that, I had started the ministry of onlinechurch.com. So one of the first online churches out of Community Bible Church about 14 years ago is when we planted that church or started that online church. And today I'm also the head of innovation for a company called Dunham & Company, where we do fundraising and marketing for Christian ministries. And then I also have a social media marketing agency called Amplify Social Media, where we fully run social media and do some online courses and things like that for Christian ministries. And so I'm so thrilled to be here. And so as we get into this, the first point that we have in these strategies is that YouTube is for you. YouTube is for you. And one of the things that I have found in the past year, as I've worked with so many different ministries in different contexts, is that there are lots of different platforms digitally to be on and to use when it comes to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and Pinterest and Nextdoor, or there's just lots of different even kind of micro platforms that we can get into that are niche platforms for different things and purposes. But what I have found consistently is that in every ministry that I've worked with in the past year, YouTube is a significant opportunity for every single one of those ministries. And the reality is that people see YouTube often as a place just to store their videos, but YouTube is so much more than that. YouTube is a search engine. YouTube is a social network. YouTube is basically where people are now watching television. YouTube is actually the number one thing people do on YouTube is listen to music. And so it's a lot of listening. It's a podcast distribution platform. And so YouTube can be a lot of different things. And wherever your organization is, and one of the things that I see consistently on YouTube, and why I believe YouTube is a platform for you, is that YouTube, while a lot of other platforms are peaking and dipping and have different kind of waves of engagement, YouTube is one of those that over the last 10 years has just steadily increased. And what I anticipate over the next 5 to 10 years is that it will only continue to steadily increase based on the trajectory it's been on and the trajectory that even media is going, as YouTube is so well positioned. So as I think about where a good investment in your media engagement strategy is, I think YouTube is probably the most consistent platform that we should be looking to engage in and engage natively in to build our audience, to build our following, and to reach new people.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. I just want to bring on our next guest, the second guest in our show, John Rawls. Welcome, John, and thank you so much for being here. And before we jump into the discussions about YouTube, John, you want to give a quick intro, and then we'll get into the YouTube discussion.
Yeah, sure. My name is John, and I am married. I have 3 kids. So my oldest is works in cybersecurity. He's in the government, and then my younger son has a marketing degree. Works with our business's mission, our company, and is our main marketer actually with our company. And then my daughter is 15, and so she is our sign language learning jujitsu artist, is what I would say. So I love how God has crafted each one of them. I lean on them. I learn a lot from my kids and each one of their gifts and talents. Kavanaugh Media was started about 7 years ago when I came back from being a church planner overseas and was VP of a mission org, got cancer, and decided to perfect time to start this marketing agency. So we're a marketing agency for mission orgs and teams. So we get to work with some of the largest mission groups that are out there, about 23 different mission organizations that we work with. And we work in currently right now at this moment, we're in about 44 different countries that we're operating in, but we've ran and done marketing in about 83, I think was the number that we found of locations that we're doing both push and pull strategies. So we love YouTube and love seeing this topic, and honored to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, John. So great to have you. What an incredible story. What a great family, and what a journey. Thank you for all that you do for the kingdom. So coming back to YouTube, Nils, thanks for sharing that. I mean, YouTube has been absolutely innovating as well. I don't know whether it is TikTok, making them innovate, or I don't know what's going on, but the number of innovations that we've seen from YouTube in the last few weeks is also huge. So first to you, John, what are your thoughts on what Nils shared? Any insights on YouTube as such?
Oh, I totally agree. In fact, we've shifted a lot of our ad spend more to a pull strategy. So whether that be Google ads, which obviously Google owns YouTube, or YouTube itself, we're seeing an increase in functionality, which is what you're talking about, Nancy. But it's the second largest search engine in the world. So people go to it already with intentionality. So they're already typing in, where can I get a Bible, or how to know this, or whatever. So I don't have to convince them. I just need to hook them. And so I love YouTube. I for multiple reasons, even just getting SRT and getting sub files from it and throwing things on there and being able to get the closed captions from them. So I fit the dynamic that he talks about. I listen to music on it. It's just always on my computer itself. And so I think it's a super smart strategy that then, depending upon how people are using it, impacts. Even if a church is using their sermons, there's a way to use YouTube and to take those different bits from your sermon and to put those out there. So it's just a wonderful platform. And if there's only one, I would agree. I would use Google and YouTube at this point.
Absolutely. Recently one ministry said, Nachi, what if I, put you in a corner, put a gun in your head kind of a thing, and say, what are the 2 channels that I should use? I said, well, I wouldn't think about it. It'll be YouTube and Instagram. That's what I said. Those are the things I would say, depending on, of course, whether it fits you and all that, but straight away out of my mouth. Nils, thought for you. So I'm people who are listening to us, I mean, ministries, some of them have been in YouTube for years, but probably used it just for a live stream and, the regular uploading of videos, used it as a video hub, right? So for those kind of large ministries who have just used YouTube as a uploading or hosting, video hosting platform, what would be your suggestion, Nils? What else can they do? I mean, they use it for live streaming. I know most ministries do that, and they use it for video hosting. What else can they do, Nils?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things is even just learning, understanding the platform instead of what you're talking about is basically redistributing to YouTube to then prioritizing YouTube as what can we create unique for this platform where so much attention is shifting. And I think a couple things. I think one is just you need to understand the perception of YouTube is that it's like short, silly cat videos. And that is what it was 10 years ago, but it has morphed. It has changed where the average video view time is over 10 minutes now. And so people are watching long form video on YouTube more and more significantly. And so quality matters when you think about long form video. The other thing that is shifting, I think, most significantly as we look at 2023 is short form video, and that's YouTube Shorts. And essentially what I believe is happening here as I look to the future of the platform is YouTube is doing to TikTok what Instagram did to Snapchat. And so they took that medium that Snapchat, what Instagram did is they took basically stories and brought it into Instagram and kind of brought it to the masses. I think TikTok introduced the format of these short vertical videos that now YouTube is going to bring to the masses. And what YouTube has built in is an ad revenue model. And that's what Instagram had built in with Facebook. And so they were able to build more of a business model, which gave it more sustainability and scalability. And so this is where I think YouTube is going. So I think if we can learn how to basically create better long form videos that are native to YouTube and optimized for YouTube, thinking about the title, thinking about the thumbnail, thinking about just even some of the distribution engagement pieces of their YouTube content, and then short form video, basically minute or less vertical video. I think that's where you're going to see great engagement moving into the future of YouTube.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And just the way they have brought in shots to the forefront. I mean, even bringing shots to the, revenue monetization element, saying, you don't even have to have, horizontal videos. You can have just shots and still be able to monetize your channel with certain number of views over 90 days is incredible. Goes on to show how seriously they're taking the competition with TikTok. And also, I just the other angle that I wanted to add and probably ask John to speak to it for a minute is the connected TV. I mean, the whole YouTube on TV thing. I mean, there's one side with this small vertical mobile video innovation. On the other side, YouTube is absolutely innovating in the larger screens and with more people watching YouTube on the screen. How does that change the dynamics for ministries, John? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the pressure is always there that people think there's a barrier to entry when it comes to YouTube or whatever, that they have to have this production level that has to be perfect. And yet when you look at some of the most successful YouTube videos that are out there, it's like a grandma sitting in her kitchen showing like she's making pies or whatever. And so the content still is going to be important, whether the platform ends up showing on a TV or on a mobile device, on a desktop, wherever they're at. It still is going to come back to that content. I think understanding though where your audience is watching it from is going to be important. And so that could drive what you do with it. If you're bringing up visuals or whatever, even the links that you're putting in things. And so if you're putting in a lot of cards and people aren't going to jump off of that into a browser that's terrible on a connected TV, thinking through your strategy there. So that just, you need to think about where your audience is consuming your content at. But at the end of the day, just having good content, having good things beats special effects and anything else that you might add to it.
Any closing thoughts on YouTube, Nils?
No, I think lean in, make YouTube. YouTube is for you. I'll just go back to that statement.
All right, let's go into strategy number 2. And I have John, who's going to bring us something that you never probably thought of. John, over to you for strategy number 2.
Well, I don't know if they will have never thought of this, but I want people to think about this. And that is just the importance of data to your strategy. And so it goes right back to what Nils was sharing with YouTube, and Nachi, you were asking there about connected TVs, is that there are all sorts of really small steps, really small things at times that people may think, well, this isn't important, but it is important. When you begin to get the broader picture together, having a data-driven strategy and then growth hacking from that. What I mean by that is having intentional tests that you're doing. When you do this, when you do an A/B test, so let's say it's Facebook and Instagram, you can run tests on your headline, on your copy, on your actual graphics, videos, pictures. There's lots of things that a person can do there to begin to see if something makes a difference. And so one of the key things that I always encourage people to do is to have OCD, to have obsessive curiosity disorder. In other words, always be asking questions like, I wonder if, or what if we change this? Or what if we used a still image here versus a video, or vice versa? But there's also then just the data itself, and it becomes really, really important. And when Apple introduced their changes in iOS 14.5, point whatever, it really shook the Facebook world. So the ability of tracking and pixels and stuff has been hampered by that. But there's still enough volume and quality data that's out there that a ministry, a mission team, a church, whatever, should be looking at what kind of data is available and what's coming into them. And so one of the areas that I would really encourage everyone watching this video to do is to make sure that they have some sort of analytics installed on their website. And so from Google Analytics, or if you're in the EU, you could use something like Matomo, or there's different ones out there. You can begin to look at things like the speed of your site and what pages are people coming to, and how often are they coming to your site, and what page are they leaving from. And it's telling you something. It's giving you an insight into the people that the Holy Spirit is working in and who is calling to your ministry page or to your outreach material. So things like your site speed, the colors on your site, your messaging, what pictures, what videos, if people are scrolling even to get to the bottom of the page, all of these things are important. And then you can tie into it ad spend that you're doing if you're doing promotional type of material. So your Google ads, your Facebook, all of this can tie in together. Now, that's one part of it. But then when you're going through it, you need to be asking some really critical questions just about what you're doing. What is your priority? And then whatever it is, that's what you need to be measuring, because it's possible for us at times to measure the wrong thing. If I'm trying to lose weight, which is something I'm always trying to do, and I'm measuring though the wrong thing. In other words, if I'm not measuring what and writing down what I'm eating or the exercise I'm doing, I shouldn't expect results from it. I can't learn from that. So what is the priority for the your ministry, and what are you pursuing? What is that you're chasing after? Who is it? Who is your target audience itself? And then I would add to that even just what are you failing at? What are you looking and learning from? One of the things that my daughter's jujitsu coach has said over and over and over is that you either win or you learn. And so when we're putting out content and when we're trying maybe some of these strategies that the viewers today are going to hear, it's important to be looking at going, all right, did this work? What could we do different? What would we want to test? Or if it completely failed, what can we learn from it? And so it's this intentionality to look at data that allows you to begin to test. And I would encourage people then to have a couple pieces of software on their site, some form of analytics. And then Google makes some really great software that's free that you can put on your website. So Google Tag Manager makes it really simple. If your church or ministry doesn't have a lot of IT people, you can put one piece of code on your website, and then there's a ton of functionality that's built into it to allow you to do testing and to inject things like Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever else kind of metrics and pixels there. And the other one would be Google then makes some software called Optimize. And both of these, you can just go to their website and get them. But the beautiful thing about Google Optimize is that now you can begin to run tests even on your website. And so you can begin to see, well, what if we put the Bible reading plan high up on the page? Or what if after a person clicked on download a Bible, it immediately brought in this? It's this question asking, this obsessive curiosity that can drive you to insights that you can see. And it can also drive you to understand some failures. And it can give you a mechanism for feedback. Matthew Syed said that creativity itself without a feedback mechanism is white noise. And so a lot of times we can have narrative fallacies. We can create stories about how well we're doing or our content is doing. But data really tells us, if we're honest with it, where we're doing well, where we can do better, where our viewers are coming from, where they're leaving on our content, and it gives us ability to do retargeting, which is something I'll share about later in the other strategy that I'm going to share about. So the key thing there that I would just encourage people to do is keep testing, because each test, each question that you ask, each small little thing that you're doing with the data provides a small gain of one kind or another. And when you do that, okay, even if it's a failure, because that's not bad, that's a learning opportunity. It sets the stage for new ideas. Every new test that you do gives you more data, it gives you more opportunities for creativity. And so for me, it would be an encouragement to strategize and use data in the strategies and the tests that you're doing in your ministry outreach.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That was powerful. One of the discussions I had with ministry leaders, I said, looking at a dashboard is actually a very spiritual experience. So I'm glad you brought in that word you mentioned about the Holy Spirit revealing things through dashboard. So many people think measurement and dashboard is a tech and nerdy thing, but for me, it's actually a spiritual experience. So because that God starts showing you like this is what people are doing, and we are all about the people. We're here to serve the people. So Nils, in your experience, what are some of the first thing? I know you work with a lot of ministries, you sit with them. So when it comes to measurement, what are some of the things, especially with social media? Since we are focusing on social media for 2023, what do you tell people to look at? Some of the big metrics that you think are what we call as needle movers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing as I think about this is I think about the number of conversations I have with leaders where I hear the terms "I feel" or I like this better, and I just think, you know what, we don't have to just guess anymore. Like, data can tell us how effectively we're accomplishing our mission if we just pay attention to it. And so it is such a critical point and unique opportunity of there's different ways to read the data, perceive the data, but we I think should be paying attention to it. And I think to your point, Nachi, we need to pay attention to the right data points. The mistake that I think a lot of leaders are making when it comes to social media is they pay attention to followers or subscribers more than any other metric of like, I want to get 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, or I want to get, 100,000 likes on my Facebook page. And in many ways, those numbers are irrelevant. I think one of the things we look at is how many people are we actually reaching? How many people are we actually engaging? And so like on YouTube, the metric that I pay attention to most, and I encourage most, and that YouTube pays the most attention to, is minutes watched or hours watched. How long are people watching your videos? And so you might have 10,000 views, but they're only watching for 10 seconds each. And so what you want to look for is how long are they watching? How effective is your content? Or on Instagram, how many people are you reaching with your content, and how many people are taking action when you have calls to action with that content? So I think there are specific engagement metrics that I think we want to look at more specifically than following metrics.
Yeah, so important to really know where to focus on, because sometimes one of the things I hear from ministry leaders is the whole measurement process is overwhelming. When you open a like Facebook Insights, there's just so many things to look at, and then Instagram, so many things to look at. So that's why I like what John mentioned, that you can use some tools that kind of aggregate everything. So John, would you say that the whole tools thing that you mentioned with Optimize and other things, does that simplify the process? because for church leaders, I think the more simple it is, the more they are easier to adopt it. So would you say the tools simplify things, or would you still say go to the native dashboard? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the tools definitely can, especially dashboards. We use Google Data Studio, or they just renamed it to Looker Studio. So terrible name, but still great software. That it's if you're in a car, you need to know your speedometer and you need to know how much fuel and petrol you have left. And you don't necessarily need to know your battery charge until it starts to go out. So we can really get overwhelmed with the metrics that are there, and we can get overwhelmed with tools, which I think is something that Nils is going to talk about here in a little bit. So just adding another tool doesn't make things better for us. But going into creating a dashboard, showing things like how many people are seeing your ad and clicking to go through. So your link click-through percentage, or your viewing percentages, like on YouTube that Nils brought up there, or your returning visits, or your downloads, or the one for us that we look at probably the most is how many private messages did we get? Because even then we measure that to then how many of those led to a face-to-face conversation where now evangelism and discipleship is taking place. So each one of those are a step, and that's the key thing. So if you can map out your steps and you know what's important, you can begin to then measure those things. So I use the analogy of a coffee shop a lot. And you can have a great coffee shop. We had one where I used to live that had bluegrass music every Tuesday night. It was awesome. But if people came in and listened to the music, but nobody bought coffee, it wasn't a success there. And so what is your ultimate goal? And then those are the things that you're measuring. Use tools to streamline that process or give you better data, better decision making. But yeah, I wouldn't say fall in love with them or have a gazillion. So start with the basics. I mean, I honestly, I would say that could be its own strategy itself. Have just a couple things that you do and get good at those. And you will learn the measurement, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, you'll begin to learn those tools that they have themselves and understand what's important for you.
Wow. Yeah, that's golden. Keep it simple and go to the basics. That's very important. And thank you so much. Thank you, John, for that. Thanks, Nils, for your thoughts. So with that, we go to strategy number 3. This is perfect transition for my strategy because we talked about private messaging as a key metric. For years, as Christian leaders and as ministries, we've focused on reaching people because we read in the Bible, we are here to reach the ends of the earth. So we think reach is the most important metric. Well, it is in some way because that's a starting point. But there's just so much importance given to the top of the funnel. Reach. How many people did we reach? How many people clicked on a button? What was the impression? So there's just so many things happening at the top. We almost forget what happens after that. So most of the time I'm sitting with ministry leaders and saying, okay, what happened? You reached 5 million people. And then what? So as many of you know, MII, we specialize in the bottom of the funnel, the journey after the reach happens. When somebody is exposed to your message and what happens next, that is where my strategy number 3 comes in, which is direct messaging. So I want you to think about in 2023 as leaders, I want you to think about what is the role of direct messaging? Because there are 3 things that direct messaging does that no other tool does better. First is it gives you a perfect next step after somebody looks at your content. If you have a direct messaging strategy where you are able to engage with your people, then you can just use the campaigns that you already have and give them a fantastic next step. So what do I do? Like you tell me about, for example, you tell people not to be worried about their life. And then what? Then what next? What are you going to tell me? The easiest thing for you say is, do you want to talk to me about it? I just told you something. Is there something that you want to, either you want to say or you want to hear me say it more? So direct messaging is where, that transition can happen from step number 1 to step number 2. So in 2023, think about that. You have great campaigns that can reach the entire world, but after it reaches people, what is the next step? And direct messaging can help you get that next step for your ministry to engage with your audience. The second reason that I wanted you to focus on direct messaging in 2023 is algorithmic help. Whether it is Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, all of them, they absolutely love it if you engage with your audience on direct messaging. because it shows them that your audience loves you. They want to talk to you. They want to have a conversation with you. So the algorithms will give you preference if you constantly have direct messaging interactions with your audience. So push for direct messaging. I'll give you some strategies towards the end, but this is algorithmic preference is one of the big reasons. And the third reason is notification. There are two things that are valuable in the social media world. One is notification, another is numbers, right? There are in any kind of social media channel, if that allows you to send notification to your audience, you should absolutely do that. Any tactic that makes you send notification to your audience, because imagine you go to Facebook, you put up a post, what happens? Nothing happens. Nobody gets notified, right? That's why organic reach is dead. So but when you send a direct message, guess what happens? Somebody, if they switched on notification, they're going to get a notification. And most people have notifications switched on, and they get notified. So that is precious. So that is why direct messaging is such a great strategy, because it helps you notify your audience, and it can notify even hundreds of people, thousands of people, right? And some of the direct messaging channels like WhatsApp gives you the big advantage of getting people's number. So these are some of the big reasons why I think direct messaging should be, in your purview in 2023 as a strategy. And people are going to continue to love direct messaging for three reasons. One is it has become part of their habit, right? Today we can't be without Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or whatever you use, Signal or Telegram. So direct messaging is part of our habit now. That's how we keep in touch. And the second reason is that's where our friends and family are. Therefore, direct messaging will never go out of style. People may stop checking their news feed. In fact, I know friends who have deleted their social media apps like Facebook, but they keep Facebook Messenger. They delete the main Facebook, they keep the Facebook Messenger because that's where their family is, right? So as long as friends and family use it, in fact, I'll tell you a story. When WhatsApp had this whole big privacy problem, a couple of ministry leaders just called me and said, Nachi, what's happening? With WhatsApp, and there's this privacy issue. What's going to happen? I've invested so much in this. Is my WhatsApp going to be completely gone? I said, no, just relax for 2-3 weeks, see what happens. So I said, just relax. It's gonna be all right. And he said, how do you know? He said, one simple reason. I said, the reason I think WhatsApp will come back is because your friends and family are still there. See, the day they leave, then, I don't know. I'm not saying WhatsApp is going to be there forever. But what I'm saying is, as long as friends and family are there, WhatsApp will be there. Right? And if they move to another channel, then you probably have to, as a ministry, look at that channel. So people will continue to use something that their friends and family use, and also trust. For some reason, research says that people trust direct messages more than regular social media. So for some reason, even though Mark Zuckerberg owns both WhatsApp and Facebook, people trust WhatsApp more than they trust Facebook, because of end-to-end encryption, because of direct. There is a trust thing when you talk directly to somebody, right? So these are big reasons. Now I'll quickly tell you 3 ways before I jump to my friends again and we talk about it a little bit. The ways to use it. So first is my suggestion to you is in 2023, connect direct messages to all your campaigns as much as you can. Okay. In fact, Facebook, if you run Facebook ads, it gives you this unique ability to have this automated tool selection. So when you run, for example, an image campaign, you can have a button below the image and you can let Facebook decide whether that button is going to be Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or Instagram DM, depending on the audience and their preference. How cool is that? You don't know what your audience prefer, but they know as a channel. So if somebody is constantly working on Instagram DM, they will show that ad with the Instagram DM button under it. So the chances of you getting a message back from them is very high. So things like that. So try to connect your campaign with a direct messaging. Second is add value and give a reason for people to message you. For example, if you're talking about as a topic like faith, then you can say, if you DM me, I'll give you a free PDF on how to build your faith. something like that. Just an example, right? So add value on your direct messaging. Try to get people to message you as much as you can. And the third is automate it. Today there are tools like ManyChat, lots of automation tools that lets you put a word in it. Like for example, if you just say yes, then you can get an automated message from a chatbot. So you don't have to do all the initial work. The chatbots will do it for you. So I don't recommend chatbots for many things, especially in ministry world. Better to keep away from automated things. But I think this one use case is very good. Filtering people in the first instance, and also making people send a one word, and with that word giving them a direct download or something like that. So that one use case is really good. So back to you guys. So Nils, I'll start with you. What has been your experience with direct messaging? Is that something that ministry leaders should focus on 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. I think what I immediately think of is the dating behavior of, you hear people talk about sliding in to the DMs, and there's a reason you do that. That's where you go to the next level of a relationship or interaction in a dating context. And I think similarly in a ministry context, as we want to move to the next level of engagement with people, that happens in the DMs. It's just a reality of patterns of behavior online. As we continue to learn how these different functions and features within social networks and these various technology tools. So I think you're right. I mean, I think it's, bottom line is too, I check. I don't see every single post that all of my friends post on social media, but I do read. I'm a zero out my inbox on all of my DM platforms, and it's just our natural behaviors and where we look to engage at the highest level of depth with the people we're closest to and trust.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and also many of us, we have our work in there, right? That's where our work contacts are. So not just friends and family. Now that you say it, I'm thinking of it. The reason I keep my inbox zero is because that's where, like, you guys ping me, you guys are friends, but we also work together. So we ping each other that and things like that. So I think the whole DM thing, I think, is going to become much, much bigger in the days to come. So no wonder, Apple, iMessage, Google, the whole blue and bubbles and things like that on Android, they're all working so hard on it because they know that that's where the gold is, really people engage. So John, what's been your experience with direct messaging, with ministries work that you do internationally? I know you do a lot of international work. So is there an impact on that?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples just real recently. Ukraine, we're running the digital marketing for, I think, the largest mission org in the world for all of that country. And direct messaging has been an integral part to that. And what we're trying to do with those direct messages, another reason I like them is that people tell us their pain points or what it is that where they're at in their life. So there is data and there's things that we can do from it. So I'll share in a little bit my funnel or strategies to it, but direct messaging is always a part of that. In Ukraine, we've had over 775,000 private messages that have come in. And most of those have been prayer requests. So they're telling us, I mean, it's heartbreaking, first of all, because they're using, this is my husband's name or my son's name. Please be praying for them or whatever. But there's a vulnerability. There's an authenticity that comes from this. There is a level of trust that comes into that. There's a level of ministry. Ministry takes place there. When you are sharing heart to heart in those direct messages, it has been unbelievably powerful. I mean, I could just spend 90 minutes giving you case by case, but the other one that I would share with you real recently is similar strategy. So we used, how can we pray for you? Direct messaging. People send their messages in. Then we follow up with more content that was already prepared because we knew what prayer requests people were going to be asking for. This is in a completely different country that they averaged 1 to 2 people a year that would get into a face-to-face discipleship meeting. We started running these ads and we had 13 face-to-face meetings in the first 2 weeks from it. So I believe direct messaging, because of the level of trust, because of that relationship being built there, that heart-to-heart nature of it, leads then to even ministry offline can take place from that. And so it's important to have a tool that will allow you to handle the volume of that. We use some very specific tools like Echo Global to handle multi-channel messages coming in from Line or Telegram or you name it. But at the end of the day, it's the person sharing their prayer request to another real person on the other end, and it's that connecting. And that's the beauty of it. And like you said, Nancy, even if WhatsApp or whatever goes away, as long as there is the internet, and as long as there are businesses who have customers, there will be tools like direct messaging to connect with people and to share spiritual truth with them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, thank you so much for sharing those. I mean, I think of some of the campaigns that we've run in MII as in the 1040 window, and some of the toughest countries where the life is tough. I mean, not just tough from a spiritual point, but just people have so much need, and some of the campaigns that we've run and the conversations that our teams, follow-up teams around the world have really had. This is just gives me goosebumps to think of how ministry happens. So thank you for sharing that point. Ministry happens at the direct messaging level. That is why it's so important. Awesome. So yeah, like we said, we can keep talking about this for a long time. It's such a powerful tool, but we've got something even more powerful coming from Nils. So let's jump on to our next strategy from Nils.
So I want to talk about flexibility, and as we look to the next year, we need to learn to flex fast. And so I think one of the pain points I have as a consultant is I often meet with an organization, sometimes twice a year, once a year. And one of the things I'll often, have almost, consistently is I will say, we'll look at what they've been doing, and I'll say, stop doing that, start doing this. And they'll say, but last time we met, you said start doing this, and now you're telling us to stop doing this. And it's like, yeah, it changed, and we have to change with what's changing. And the reality is, like, we are paying attention to the landscape of what's happening. And I recommended earlier, like, YouTube is for you today, and I think it's going to be for tomorrow, but that might change. And there might be something that happens in the next 6 months that we're not aware of. And this landscape of digital media continues to change at such a rapid pace that we have to, as leaders, remain as flexible as we can be to this changing landscape. And when we are flexible, we'll be able to catch unique opportunities, and we'll also stop wasting time on things that are no longer as relevant as they once were, maybe even just weeks or months ago. I think about specifically Twitter right now as a platform that I am very excited about. And, with the leadership shift with Elon Musk, we are seeing higher engagement than they've ever had on Twitter. And so rapid growth. But the reality of Twitter is, in the next 6 months, it might explode. It might double in engagement and become a huge ministry opportunity. But it also might totally crash. It might be a total waste of time for you and your organization to invest in. So I think we have to remain flexible and pay attention. And I think, too, as we even dip our toes into waters, we've got to be cautiously, not overinvest, but be flexible and ready to test. And then when we see things working, to dig in, and maybe invest even more. Or when we also see things not working, we've got to stop doing it. And I think about even the history of social media. Facebook pages are such a pain point for so many leaders now. And I hear from so many people that, like, invested so much in building their Facebook following and their Facebook engagement to just have Facebook change their algorithm. And all of a sudden, all that investment is not worth the investment, but they kept investing the same energy and time for a long time because they had already invested so much, even though that time was really wasted, because they just needed to adapt and adjust to the changing landscape. And so we, as leaders, I think as we move into the next year, I can't tell you where you're going to need to flex, but I think we need to ensure that our organization and our systems are ready to adapt and adjust, because I can almost guarantee you, whatever is the state of social media right now at the end of 2022 is not going to be the same state of social media and digital media this same time of year in 2023. And so we've got to be ready to flex to the changing landscape.
What a great wake up call for all of us as ministry leaders. Thank you, Nils, for sharing that. And yeah, I think one of the philosophies or psychological theories that come to my mind is sunken cost fallacy, where you just because you put so much into something, you keep investing it again and again and again. And I think I heard that when you mentioned about the Facebook pages. Such a powerful truth. So, John, in your experience, what is the timeline that that ministry leaders should consider before making any shift, or before deciding that, okay, I got to move and I got to be flexible and take the next thing, like Nils mentioned? What is there, like a rough practical timeline? Like, should I try something for 6 months or 3 months? What's been your experience?
I think I love the idea of failure. I think we learn from it, but we're afraid of it. And so that, like you brought up there, the sunken cost, and this, we've already put this stuff into it, or whatever else. Social media is rental property. Even YouTube is. Like, we don't own it. And so I think it needs to be not the timeline is yesterday. Like, we've got to always be thinking about what happens when these things go away, what's coming next, and put our ear to the ground and really be listening on it. I would encourage people to have, in essence, almost an R&D mindset, where there's maybe 20% of their efforts are going into new areas and they're exploring with it. One of the big things for us is Web3. We're spending a ton of time thinking Web3, and more specifically, we're thinking about from a strategy perspective. So when people start trying to shut things down, how do we get around that in those kind of places? But I really appreciate what Nils was saying there about people get locked into a strategy. And so they know one way of doing it, and then it stops working, and then they're just done. And so, I think that's why disclaimers of, hey, yeah, I did say this, and now we're saying this, can be frustrating. But we're getting close to 200 episodes on the show that I do. There's content on there that's wrong now, but that's okay. And so I think that's this idea, maybe it's because we're a nonprofit or fundraising worlds or whatever, people are afraid to fail or to admit failure. But I think we need to embrace it. And we have to have this mindset of ready, fire, aim. Like, let's try something. Oh, didn't work. Let's go on this. Let's pivot. Let's iterate, look for connections, and move forward there. But I think it just needs to be part of the very ethos and DNA of our ministries, personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to become part of our DNA, especially in 2023. We, as you know, I do the weekly news, so I'm like tracking things, and sometimes it's so hard for me to pick up 5 things out of the 100 things, because it's changing so rapidly. Like, what worked yesterday, it didn't work today. So as you said, if we suggest something and it changes, well, I would be surprised if it didn't change, So even Facebook changed its name. So who would have thought of that? So things like that. So Nils, a question for you. So when people flex, when people move things, how do they manage expectations from the team, from the stakeholders, from the audience? As ministries, we are people who don't change a lot in a way.
Yeah.
we've been reading one book for a long time, kind of a thing. So
yeah. Well, I think John says so well of I've never even thought about giving it a percentage, but of like 20% of your time is R&D. I think it is important, though, of like, we have our rhythms, and the bigger our organization gets, the more complicated it is to try new things. And so we in many ways need to always, if we're going to try something new, that means we probably need to stop doing something we're currently doing. And so that's where we have to almost just have this bandwidth established of, okay, I think we need to test into the Twitter, more significantly in the next 90 days. And so that means we probably need to pull back from doing maybe 5 TikToks a week. Maybe we just need to do 3 TikToks a week. And we're going to do this instead. And so I think you can always look at where can we pull back. Every time you're looking at where can we push in, you also probably need to be looking at where should we be pulling back. And I think that goes back even to the data conversation, is let the data tell you where, as we're doing testing, where are we seeing better success and where are we seeing less engagement. And so maybe we pull back here and then invest more here. And so I think it's always just this push and pull, but your capacity isn't generally changing. You're more just shifting your attention and your focus.
Yeah, I agree. And, some of the conversations that I've had with ministry leaders recently I was sitting in a board meeting with a ministry, and they said one of the things that they tried about 5-6 years ago and didn't work, but they somehow felt that they need to keep doing it. So they did a 5-10% work on that, until at one point it gave 80% results, So it's almost like a startup mindset where you're saying, let me wait for the market to mature, but I need to somehow bootstrap until that point to keep doing something if I feel convinced about it. So yeah, it's not easy, but I think it's important for ministries to constantly shift. Thank you guys for all that wisdom. I think it's important as we enter a 2023 year of changes that's going to surround us. Great. For the next strategy, I'm going to ask John to lead us into what he has in store. Take it away, John.
All right. Well, this is going to be one of those 2023 strategies that you're going to have to plug or play different parts into it. But what I wanted to look into is just this idea that people have a couple different things. In fact, I want to share my screen on some of this. And it is just this idea that where a person starts their engagement with you isn't where it needs to stop when you're doing it. And so what you'll need to see here, and I'm going to bring up my screen to show this to you, is that people have different views of what they want and what you want when it comes to your ministry. But we're really talking about a life change, which requires a tremendous cost. People are, their worldview, persecution, their time, their treasures, all of that. And so in whatever way you're doing it, they have goals and you have goals. And so what we want to be able to do as we're looking at all of those is to be able to understand where our audience is and then be able to remarket or retarget them in different ways. And so when a person sees your social media or your ad or your website or your blog or video, they many times are just trying to learn a little bit about you. You're trying to attract them to continue that process. It is like dating in some ways. And so there's three major parts: knowing, liking, and trusting. They need to know that your ministry exists. They need to like what they're seeing. And then there's a level of trust that comes later. This is just basic marketing principles there. But their goals will be to learn. They're evaluating through that process. They decide at some point, and then they begin to trust and to share their thoughts to people. So as we're doing this, there are different ways for where we can step into that process. And so top of the funnel, as Nachi's already brought up, we lean into that a lot. This is where your paid social ads are. This is where we're trying to put out Holy Spirit fruit. We're trying to touch these pain points that people have in their life. And we're trying to show how that whatever that problem is, there is an answer, a solution that is to them. This is then later on into it where testimonials, where Bible downloads, where Bible reading plans, all of this information lets people see, oh, this is who Jesus is, or this is who this church is, or whatever the ministry might be. This is later down. What you lead with will look different. The beautiful thing I like about using multiple channels is that you can start in one channel, like YouTube, where they've already shown intent, but then it will take them, say, with an end card to your website, which is something I think every ministry needs to have. But from your website, and then you can see what pages that a person is going to, how much time that they are spending, and you could then send them an Instagram or a Facebook ad based upon their behavior of what they've already been doing, consuming, watching, whatever. This is where the data, this is where direct messaging, this is where channels like YouTube, Instagram, any of them all work together. And this is what allows us then to be able to start to develop a strategy that is able in 2023 to adapt, to flex, using Neil's word there, to where your people coming are. They start being unaware, but we want to get them to the point where they see that Jesus is a solution for them. And as we're going through that process, as we're thinking through that, when it comes to these social ads and the material we're putting out, it needs to remove obstacles from them. It needs, if they're already aware of the problem, so they go to YouTube and they type in, how do I, or how can I, or where can I, they're aware of their pain point, their bruise, their spiritual longing. That's where we begin to share solutions with them. But if they're not aware of it, if they become comfortably numb, then that's where we have to press in by showing this Holy Spirit fruit to people. So it's thinking about your audience and thinking about it at different points. Now, one of the challenges that come about from this is that people tend to think about all this material in a linear fashion. So I want to share one more screen with you, and that is just this idea that many times what we're doing is not so much a linear thing, but it is a whole idea of a graph. And so what you have here is ability to begin to look through material, and I'll pull it right down here so I can see it better myself, and I can begin to see how different material connects together. So the content itself, if I go to this one, it is about church. And now all of a sudden I can see these different pieces of content that relate to church, and I can think and see how they all begin to go together. And I'm not recommending somebody has to use software like this or whatever, but I want people to think about that sometimes it's not a linear journey or a funnel. A funnel is our attempt to describe what is already happening out there. We don't make a funnel and then try to push people into it. We use funnels to describe what is happening, these percentages and things. But what I'm noticing and what I would think is happening more and more in 2023, we may see this, is that it's far more of just a graph like this. It's a broader spectrum. And there's many touch points to it. And so we have to learn to be able to put our content in these different places and remarket and retarget based upon then where people are coming from. And so thinking through all of that helps people go, oh, well, this is where they started, but this is my next step. And now I'm going to take them to this place over here. So it's understanding that those steps or that flow to the process that ministry might be doing.
Wow, that is such an insightful illustration, both of it. Thank you so much. Nils, just a follow-up question on that. So when the ministry leaders are thinking about this non-linear contact touch point that are spread all over, in some ways the audience are in control. If you think of it, they decide what happens, they decide where to go. It's not us who are trying to guide them, but they just go all over. So what has been some of your challenges as you look at these multi-funnel stages kind of campaigns that you have recommended for ministries? What have been some of the challenges, and what can ministries look to solving in 2023?
Yeah, as I think about all the different channels that are out there for leaders today, it's overwhelming and complex. And I think the reality is we've got to adapt and adjust to the people that we're trying to reach. And one of the things we're always looking at is how do we move people to their deepest level of engagement with our organization and with our ministry, and that looks different for everyone. And so for some, that's just consuming some of our content. And others, that's getting into a direct message. Some of it's actually even face-to-face interactions that it leads to that level of connection. But I think reality is that's going to have different channels, and that's rarely going to just exist on one place in one way. And so we have to be ready in a multi-channel approach to engage them in multiple ways. And I think it's you think about if we were to just be, and I think about early days of online ministry, I was on MySpace. And if I just kept them on MySpace, they wouldn't really, I would have no relationship with them today because it's not there anymore. We have to adapt and adjust to where some of the platforms are going and where people are going. And then too, I think the beauty is, and I think what John spoke to, so uniquely, is we understand these platforms better. There are opportunities that we don't even realize exist. And so when you think about retargeting opportunities with advertising and how that mixes into our marketing strategy, there's just so many great opportunities, and it can feel overwhelming. But the reality is the more we kind of diversify that engagement, the greater opportunity we have to really move them down to the deepest level of engagement with our organization rather than just keeping them where they are.
Yeah, what an incredible challenge we have in our hands. I mean, one side we look at the growth in social media, the growth in the audience, which is an opportunity for ministries because you get to reach all these billions of people. And then at the same time, we have this challenge in our hand of saying, I need to be very funnel conscious or journey conscious, or in John's word, don't be funnel conscious, just be audience conscious and where they are and so on. So John, before we jump into other things, just want to ask you one thing about this. Are there any practical tools or anything that could help ministries navigate this challenge? I mean, how do we track audience journey? How do we know who is at what stage? Are there any tools that you use or your organization or consulting journey uses?
Yeah, this is where, with the data stuff, you can see what search terms people are using. You can see what people are searching for on your website. So this is where Google Analytics, this is where those kind of tools play into it. You can see your data insights as far as doing like a year-end audit, 2022, what's worked, how much of what themes though. Tagging your content in advance, you can begin to look and see things. And so it reminds me when I used to be a pastor, when I made a shift from being a deductive style to more of an inductive style, moving from known to unknown, from unknown then to known. And so it was more circular, or there were layers instead of just this 1, 2, 3 points of doing it. And so there's a classic book that's out there talking about preaching without authority. And so all of a sudden, it's this idea that we don't have authority, but we may have influence, which is perfect for social media. You have influencers, but your influence can wane. It can go away and stuff. And so we walk alongside these people we're with, and we look at the data, but I don't want us to ever forget that those ones and zeros, those thumbs and those likes, those kind of things are a real person that Jesus died for. And so the more that we can lean into it, look at the data, and really understand these spiritual pain points that they have, the better we can walk alongside of them and provide the right content at the right time to them. We can partner with the Holy Spirit then that way, instead of just forcing a structure or strategy on people.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so important to have that perspective. And talking about influence going away, my next strategy is in 2023, think about diversifying your social media work, because influence going away is an absolute reality. I mean, from India, where I'm talking to you from right now, one morning we all woke up and we just found that TikTok was not there. I mean, I know friends, ministries who invested so much in TikTok, and one fine day, poof, gone. For things that we don't have control over. Right now, that's an extreme case, and he's saying, social media channels don't just vanish just like that. But I'll tell you another thing that's happening a lot these days: channels being banned. Recently, we had a ministry Facebook page with 500,000 plus followers, which they were using as one of the main channels, gone. I mean, it was just not there. And ministries have had their YouTube channels banned. What happens to you at that point in time? That is why the strategy that I'm going to talk to you about is diversification. I think John and Niels both talked about this in different contexts. They touched upon it. For example, all social media channels are rented land. So can you think of an owned land? And personally, I think in my view of where we are as ministries in the social media era and this ecosystem, I don't think we are ready, or we have the luxury right now or the liberty to say, I don't want to work with any social media channel. I'll do this all on my own. I don't think we are there yet. I mean, maybe we will get there at some point in the future. Who knows? But I don't think we are there yet. Even at this point, I think 80-90% of our effort has to be on these big social networks and social media channels, because that's where the people are. And we are all about our people. Jesus was in the marketplace, and we need to be where the people are. So if billions of people are using it, then we need to learn how to use it. And we need to figure out ways of using it. And as much as, okay, let me just give you a picture of what's happening there. When I say we need to figure out ways of doing it, why am I saying we need to figure out? Because policies are changing. In our news tracking every week, we find that every week almost some tweaks happening to policies. YouTube changes its policy, Facebook changes its policy, ad accounts change their policy, LinkedIn changes its policies. And every time they change their policies, as ministries, as nonprofits who work in this sensitive ecosystem, sensitive space, we get impacted a lot. There have been ministries who have lost their channel for they didn't even know what the reason was. Typically, I'm sure John and Nils also have this experience. We all get calls as consultants saying, hey, it's gone, can you help us? And we go in and we look at it and we realize, well, actually, they haven't done anything wrong, at least to their knowledge, right? And it's gone. It's simply because without their knowledge, they violated a policy which changed. So as much as the things we are talking about, you need to be on top of trends and so on, it's also important to start thinking about diversification. So I think 2023 is a good time for you to spend a little bit of time, not a whole lot, maybe a 5-10% of your effort, as we talked about earlier, some effort in flexing, some effort in testing. I think there also needs to be a little bit of effort in diversifying. I think it's good for you guys as ministry leaders to think, can I not be putting all my eggs in one basket? It's good for you to think about that. Maybe a little bit of your time, 5% of your time, because it might come in handy at a later stage. So I've got 3 strategies for you that you can think of. One is diversify into other top channels. Okay, if you have a very large, like for example, we look at Nils and the background, you will see Nils's YouTube play, that silver play button. If you are big in YouTube like that, then maybe you can think of diversifying into another big channel like Instagram or Facebook, where there are billions of people. Or if you're on the other, vice versa, if you're big on Facebook, think about diversifying to YouTube, something like that. So first strategy is diversifying to other top channels. So that way, if one top channel goes, over the years, you would have built your audience in the other channel. The second strategy I want to mention is diversifying to lesser known channels that are just up and coming. So for example, when Clubhouse came out, not many people paid attention to it. Again, now it's gone down a little bit, but at one point it was a great channel that was up and coming. So when you see a new channel up and coming, maybe it's good for you to spend that little bit of time exploring that, so that you can diversify into that when a need arises. Right? That is second. The third is diversify into your owned land instead of the rental land. So as I said, it's still not time to abandon the large channels, but it's still good for you to build your own land at some level, even if it's a small level. I mean, the smallest level possible is for you to build your WhatsApp broadcast list, WhatsApp groups, or Facebook Messenger groups, or even Telegram community, or your own land like membership sites. Right? Maybe you can have your own community sites that are like Facebook group, but outside of Facebook. Maybe your own church Facebook group, your own ministry tools that can use. There are very good tools today like Circle, Mighty Network, lots of interesting channels like that you can build your own community on. I mean, it is inconvenient because you'll have to sign up for another one and all of that, but it's worthwhile. As churches and ministries, some of you have loyal audience and they will do anything. The easiest thing they will do is to sign up to another account. They wouldn't mind. But over time, maybe in 2023, you can start this process, but over time, maybe you will gather some momentum in building your own land so that tomorrow, if there is something with the rented land, then you have something to fall back on. So those are the 3 practical steps you can start thinking about in 2023. As I said, this is not a big emergency situation, but something to start over, so that when you have to jump into a serious situation, then you have something to fall back on. And the last point I want to make is when you think about these diversification strategies, always think of the smoothest transition content. Okay, there are many content pieces out there that you can use as a transition content. For example, you can do live streaming on YouTube and Facebook and all these big channels. And at the end of the live streaming, you can say, I'm going to give you some resources, and for you to get those resources, if you can join our community, we will have a deeper conversation. So not just giving away, but also meaningful engagement. Like we talked about direct messaging already. That could be your own land diversification strategy. Or you can say, or you can just stop and simply say, okay, now that you're watching my Facebook Live, are you following us on YouTube? Why don't you follow us on YouTube? So try to smoothly, very strategically and tactically transition people into other channels using any of these three, to either top channels or minor channels or your own community areas. So first, to start with, John, any thoughts on that? Do you think that is something valuable for ministries to think about?
Oh, for sure. I get emails. I probably get almost at least one a day, every other day, from ministries or teams or accounts that are getting shut down. And listen, if our goal is to finish the Great Commission, if it is to expedite the Lord's return, then the places and the things that are left are hard. And there are those who would wish to stop that. That's the world, at least for me, that I spend my time always thinking about. And there are hostile, as you said, places and governments and accounts and things that are making it harder and harder to VPN. Don't use it, or VPNs have to share who's using it in your location there, Nachi. And so we need to be leaning into this, and we can cross post material. You have something that's a long form video on a YouTube, you can take and make bits and pieces of that and reuse that at the same time on other platforms. The reason why I would add to the ones to diversify is to have a website. And there are ways to say that you can diversify even that for structure to try to get ahead of being able to be shut down from it, which is completely different talk. But with a website, then wherever they're at, they can go and follow. It's like a library. They can follow their path. Where with any social media one, it gets hard after 2 or 3 months. Your best piece of content was buried. Like they just don't even see it. And so with a website, it's that central hub. You own it. Yes, it can get shut down. Yes, there are other things that are happening. I'm leaning into that kind of stuff as well. But I love the idea of diversifying, and it doesn't have to be a tremendous amount more work. It's reusing some of your content just in other appropriate ways in appropriate channels.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that idea of using website as a owned land. So I think there's a lot to it. And interestingly, you can have almost like a social media experience on your own website if you strategically plan it like that. And if you look back, that's where it all started. I mean, your comments on your WordPress site was your social media at some point. So it's not a bad strategy, and you can get people to log in and give the information and so on. So Nils, any diversification strategies from your experience?
What I heard and what I really value too is, and I think there's so many things that I'm taking away from this time, and I've got an action board on my wall, and I'm going to add a testing section. Is one of the things I'm taking away of what are the 2 or 3 things that I'm testing right now. And I think it's so valuable to be testing different platforms. And I think too, the language, and John, you said it so well earlier, of the rented property versus owned property. Of at the end of the day, we need to move people towards our own property, but nobody randomly finds our owned property. We have to move them there, and some of that is through Google search, where Google search is finding our site and moving them there, but we do that strategically. But a lot of it is through social media, but at the end of the day, we're using social media to move them into our own properties and not leaving them there. And so we can't get too upset when we get evicted from those places, because we've got to know that while we're here, this is temporary, property that we're kind of gaining attention from. And that's how we're using it. And when we're no longer gaining attention, we move on. We should move on, because we didn't buy that property. We just hung out there for a little bit while there was a gathering there. And so I think so much of what I'm taking away is just even how to approach it. The other thing that I heard, Nachi, that I'm thinking a lot about right now is these kind of almost hybrid platforms like Discord or like Circles, or like where they're kind of, not necessarily owned property, but yet we kind of pay for them. And so it's kind of pseudo owned, but it is a community based platform that we're going to have to move people into. But we're in some ways renting the technology more than we're renting the actual platform that's bringing people to us. And so it's just a different kind of, almost like a hybrid owned, where our website we fully control with like a Discord or a platform like Circles. We use it the way it was built, or Mighty Networks, but we kind of pay for the technology. And so it's kind of a hybrid. And I think that's probably going to become more and more significant in the coming year, that we can almost move people to a place of engagement where it's not as fully customized, but it's built out in a more natural way for people to engage in community with others.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's going to be the way. In fact, my friend Mark Schaefer, when he talks about people, he says, as a marketing guru, he talks about islands. He says people, the future of marketing is going to be islands that people actually invite us to come as organizations. So people will have multiple islands, and we will be moving from one island to another. I think that's where we are. And just one more point to that is some of the tools that like Circle and Mighty Network have an interesting SLA or agreement that the data is completely owned by the organization that signs up. So they have the security and end-to-end. So it's like you don't have to do all the hard work now. They will host it and everything for you, but it is still private, and they allow you to do what you want to do, that kind of thing. So I think it's worthwhile for ministries to look at that. So something for everyone to think about. Well, it's hard to believe, but we've covered 6 points, and we have come to the last strategy of this show. And to do the honors, Nils, lead us through the final strategy. You can't wait to hear it.
Yes, this is kind of the statement that I say to myself on an almost daily basis, and that is avoid shiny object syndrome. And I'll just say it again: avoid shiny object syndrome. Avoid shiny object syndrome. I have the worst case of shiny object syndrome, I think, of any leader ever. I love new technologies. I love new platforms. I love new tools. And I see opportunities in all of them. The reality is there are opportunities in almost every new social network and every new, digital technology platform or tool that's created. But the reality is they're not all a good investment of both our time and our money, and our resources. And really, I think probably what's most wasted in ministries is our time. Is it might be free, and we often look at like Facebook or social media as free, but the reality is it takes a lot of our time to create content, to manage response, to handle engagement, to learn these platforms and how to utilize these platforms. And so at the end of the day, we need, and it can almost sound counterintuitive to so much of the other things we've talked about. We need to be testing, we need to be doing R&D. We need to be flexing into new opportunities, but I think we also need to do that in a cautious way and avoid shiny object syndrome. And so one of the things I hear a lot right now is metaverse. And we need to get into Web3? We don't want to be left behind. We want to set up a metaverse ministry. And the reality is there's just not that many people in the metaverse yet. Now, I think we need to be thinking about, I think we need to be learning about, I think we need to be prepared for Web3 and the metaverse. But the reality is we don't need to get off of Instagram and plant our stake in the metaverse, or we most likely don't need to. And so that might be for a niche group that needs to be on the forefront of that technology. We often get caught up in new tools. And so I think about, people are always asking me, should I do Sprout Social? Should I do Agora Pulse? And the reality is maybe the new tool is better than what you're currently using, but the time it's going to take to even shift over is not going to be an efficient use of your time. And we're almost too quick to change. There's new platforms like Be Real right now. And Nachi mentioned Clubhouse. And I think sometimes we need to test into some new platforms, but we don't necessarily need to go all in the moment it's happening. And so this is a tension we have to manage of being intentional to do R&D and to test and to not be a laggard into the new platforms to meet and reach and engage around new opportunities. But we also can waste a whole lot of time and a whole lot of our resources by over investing into R&D and into new platforms while abandoning what is working and where we are. And so this is where I think data becomes so important, is that we look at in our testing what's working, and we look at what we're doing and what's working, and we look at what's not working, and then we invest more into where we're seeing fruits, and we pull back of where we're not seeing the same effectiveness that we once were. And so we've got to pay attention to the trends and what's happening. But I want to caution you as you come out of a session like this, where you've heard about a lot of new platforms like Circle or Mighty Networks, or even as I encourage you around YouTube, of like, look, there are some new things and some new opportunities that you probably need to be paying attention to and learn about. But I think we've got to cautiously approach those platforms and avoid having shiny object syndrome and constantly pivoting and never investing enough to gain traction into some of the key platforms that we're focused on.
I think it's also about stewardship. What Nils is talking about is being a good steward of your time, good steward of your effort, and always watching what works for you and your audience and your ministry, and what brings the most return on investment, and kind of focusing on that. And yet, trying to flex a little bit and experiment a little bit and diversify a little bit and do all of that a little bit, but not making sure that you do the give the first importance to the most important. So, John, thoughts on that, being focused, non-distracted, if it may, on Nels's point. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think Apple has taught us is that you don't have to be first to market. You just need to be really good at doing a few things really well. So this is that idea of your swim lane. Find a few things, do those things really well, and don't get caught up in the noise of, oh, well, this ministry's doing it, or this person's doing it, so we need to do it, or whatever else. No, do a few things really well. In a previous life, or actually just a lot of years ago, I used to coach college basketball. One of my heroes is a guy named John Wooten, who coached at UCLA. And one of the key things there is he would even teach people how to tie their shoes, like do the basics really well. And so our offense that we ran had 4 plays, but so we just got really, really good at being able to iterate off of those, but do a few things really, really well. And then you'll know, oh, well, this next thing is a new thing to be able to come into it. For example, Web3 itself can mean a ton of different things. We're running experiments right now using an old school type of technology, using some new Web3 stuff into it. I'll give you a word that we're calling it. We're calling it evangelism instead of evangelism. So that's my only hint about, because we haven't figured out yet if this is going to work or not, but it's using new things to complement what you do really well. And don't get caught up into what other people are doing or the marketing of all of these people to the marketers. Just do a few things really well. Bring God glory. Do those things how he has gifted you or your ministry, and do those things well. And then celebrate where others are doing different things and what they're doing well. And it's that diversification. It's that mosaic of the body of Christ, which is where that's what's going to bring glory to God at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think it's important to stay close to your audience and kind of constantly see, is there a clue, that people are talking about a new platform? If your church members are talking about a new platform, then maybe that's what you should check out. Your church members are coming asking you, like one of the organizations that I work with, they came and said, people are asking me about tithing using cryptocurrency. And I said, well, if people are asking you about it, then that's an area that probably you should look at, because that's where your audience are. Then probably some of them are thinking about those things. So I think the clue is also within the audience as to where you should focus on. Right, Nils? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Of so much of this comes in listening, and I think the fact that you're here in this webinar for this learning is you're paying attention, and keep paying attention and keep looking for those places maybe that you need to look to. Is where should we be testing? And I think also simultaneously, and I think it's also talking about where should we be testing, and where should we maybe be cutting. And I think we as leaders often just want to add to our plate, and we don't want to subtract. from our plate, and I think that we need to be adding, but simultaneously we have to be subtracting simultaneously. And when we do that, we will see a greater lift. We should see a greater lift in our responsiveness. But I think when we look to where we add, I think to your point, Nachi, of just look for those key places to listen, of paying attention to webinars like this, or to the people you're engaging with. What are they talking about? Or surveys are such a great way of just survey the people you're engaging with of what other platforms are you engaged on. And when you see something pop up that you weren't aware of, maybe that's a good sign that you see some consistency of a different platform that you weren't maybe prioritizing. And a lot of times what happens is we don't think about those platforms because we don't like those platforms. And I think it comes back to preference. And I think that's where data becomes an important piece to that conversation. Is we need to be where people are, not necessarily where we want to be.
Well, brothers, thank you so much. What an incredible conversation. So before we close, I just want to hear from each of you. How can people learn more about each of you? How can they connect with you? What's your preferred channel? John, I'll let you go first. What's the best way for people to learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, and we have Kavanaugh Media, so we'll probably put that in your show notes, but it's with a K. Okay, it's a Hebrew word. It means focused. On there, we have probably a year to 2 years worth of ad examples and things. We have a weekly podcast and YouTube show. We're on episode 180 this week. That comes out every Friday at about 1:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So they can direct message me from the website. They can email me. I am on as a lurker on Twitter, but you can DM me on there as well, or Kavanaugh, either one of us on there. And that'd be the easiest way to find us.
Thank you, John. Once again, thank you for being on the show. And Nils, how can people find more about you, connect with you, ask any questions if they have to?
Yeah, so similarly, I would say social media. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Nils, just search my name, Nils Smith. It's unique. Having a unique name makes it easier to find me. So NILS SMITH, and so I'm at Nils Smith on pretty much every social network.
Thank you, Nils, and thank you, John. Now we get to an important part of the program, which is answering your questions. So if you have asked your questions already, we are going to answer it now. If you've not yet asked your questions, then you can use the Q&A button to ask your questions. It's not too late. Please ask your questions in the Q&A section. And now over to my team member, Clara, for the Q&A session.